there's Carlsen was on 5.5. So the question was, could Carlsen keep up with Anand and Nakamura? Now, he had a very, very long game against Nepomniachtchi, and we had yet another Najdorf variation with Carlsen on the white side of the Najdorf, and once again he played bishop e2. He was successful against Nakamura, and the game followed that. Now, against Nakamura, Carlsen played bishop e3, and if you remember, castles was played and then g4 with a strong attack. I have no doubt that Nepomniachtchi would play bishop e6, the normal move. But Carlsen did not play bishop e3. He tried a different variation today. He played castles kingside straight away, and then king h1. This is not the most dangerous move in the world. Kasparov tried it a few years ago. Some of the top players tried it, but basically it was discovered that it really wasn't that dangerous. Okay, what's the idea of king h1? Well, the idea is that white is trying to gain a tempo. So, for example, in this position, after bishop e6, f4, if black takes, you play bishop on c1 takes f4 in one move. Let me do a compare and contrast. In this position, if you go bishop e3, bishop e6, and then f4, then you're a tempo down on that line. The king is on g1 and not on h1. Of course, the king is more useful on h1. Now, this is very subtle indeed. So let's just see the game again. So king h1 hopes to gain a tempo by capturing in one move, if you see what I mean with the bishop. Okay, f4 was played, but instead of putting the bishop to e6, Nepomniachtchi played with b5 and put the bishop on b7. Now, this is, to my mind, a very sound continuation. And we can see here one of the problems in the Sicilian when white plays f4. What exactly is that pawn hitting? There's no bishop to attack on e6, so f5 makes no sense. If you take here, there's nothing doing. You can recapture with the knight. And in the meantime, that pawn on e4 can come under fire because it's no longer protected by another pawn. So basically, I mean, to my mind, I don't think white has any advantage here at all, and it seems to me that Carlsen was kind of making things up again. I think his preparation wasn't really up to much. Okay, so this is the game continuation, and I think black is absolutely fine here, it seems to me. If white captures on b5, then, well, this only helps black to put more pressure on e4. Carlsen played queen d4, and Nepomniachtchi actually offered a repetition here. And with hindsight, it might have been best for Carlsen to take that repetition. Instead, okay, he played on, and now played rook e1. But, well, black is absolutely fine here. I mean, you can see it. You know, these pieces are excellent, and Nepomniachtchi found a very good way to put pressure on Carlsen's position. Excuse me, just one moment. I've just got a snuffle. That's better. Ah. Okay, so b4, and here's the idea. You're taking on e4. Now, Carlsen gets his pawn back. It's a trade. But this is quite typical of Sicilians, where black trades a wing pawn, a pawn at the flank, for a pawn in the middle. Once that pawn goes, this bishop is absolutely fantastic. and black is building up a nice attack. Now white is probably okay here if he plays accurately, but Carlsen missed a very, very strong idea. After bishop f3 takes, he thought he was okay, but queen d7 was a really, really strong move. Point being that if pawn takes, then rook a4 wins. So queen back, check here, and queen g4, and mate on g2. Okay, and suddenly it's extremely difficult for white. Okay, here's another move. What about knight a5? Hitting this, knight g3 is incredibly strong. Takes, check, and now we take here, and well, let's say rook here, with the idea of coming up, and well, black isn't even material down for this position. So Carlsen found this move, bishop f4, and now, well, during the game we were thinking maybe knight f2, and with pressure here, but maybe it's not so bad for white, that the knight is at least quite good on d4. But Nepomniachtchi was very brave. He played knight f6, and now queen g4, and okay, with this continuation he'd obviously worked out that he could reach roughly this position. And once again, Nepomniachtchi played bravely. He could of course take a draw here with queen f3, but he played on. Very, very good decision. Queen f2. Okay, the dust has settled after that great explosion of moves. What's happening? Basically, black's king is safe behind 3 pawns. White's king only has 1 pawn in front of it. This is the basic problem. And because of the white king's insecurity, it's actually terribly difficult to advance these pawns, because you have to pay attention to your king the whole time. This is the problem. And Nepomniachtchi judged this perfectly. So after check here, now knight e4, and very important, he's been able to station his knight in the middle of the board. So he builds up behind this knight and slowly goes for an attack on the king. First of all, giving his king a nice square, on a light square of course. If rook g2 comes, then I think black can simply play g5 and yeah, f6 and king here, and it's absolutely fine. So h3, this is an attempt to give his king a slightly safer square behind the bishop. But in the long term, this is still very, very good for black. Okay, the rook is really active. f5 to support the knight. I mean, of course, this knight is just horrible for white. Absolutely horrible. You know, you have to deal with these threats the whole time. And the bishop is really nothing special on f4. Okay, king h7, very good move, just putting the king to a beautifully safe square. And these pawns really aren't going anywhere at all. This is the problem. Okay, now the rook swings over, and queen b5. Black can slowly come forward. And now Carlsen is under huge pressure. Suddenly, you know, he's got to defend these pawns as well as looking after his king. Sometimes there's even a threat to push this bishop out of the way with g5, but I think very cleverly Nepomniachtchi did not go for g5 straight away. This, of course, okay, sometimes it's incredibly strong, but it would unbalance the position because it would mean that black's king is less safe. You only go for g5 if A, if it's winning, B, if you've got nothing else. It's just more practical to have your king safe with the pawns here. And now if c3, then the second rank is exposed, then rook a6, and white is really creaking here. So instead Carlsen gave up the exchange, but this is pretty hopeless actually. The pawns still aren't going anywhere. The king is still desperately insecure, and well, the game was wrapped up very, very nicely by black here. The queen is in, and okay, you can take pawns, and okay, we may as well go to the end. Well, we've got this far, we may as well go to the end. The Prodi says, and the opponent always has to calculate g5. That's true. Yeah, sometimes the threat is stronger than the execution. Let your opponent always have to calculate g5, and sometimes it is good, but play the other moves first. So this is a really good technique from Nepomniachtchi. Okay, let's just go to the finish. So everything just beautifully solid, and now it's just a question of making sure the king is safe, getting out of these pins. So the king is actually quite safe here. Okay, let's just see the game continuation, and now the rook goes in. And finally the queens were exchanged. Basically it was going to happen sometime. I don't think there's much that white can do in this position. And after the queen exchange, okay, it's all over. We almost got the ending that Shirov had against Grischuk. Not quite though. With this move, Nepomniachtchi is avoiding that ending. I think after h6 we would get the same ending that Shirov won against Grischuk. It's tricky, but Shirov managed it actually beautifully. But actually I'm sure that Nepomniachtchi would have played g5 and then scooped up the pawn. And then with the g pawn, it's an absolute doddle to win that position. So this is the reason why he played king back to f6 rather than king f5. After king f5, would there still be a problem? Yeah, okay, you can't go for this because of this move. So that's the reason he played king f6. So this is a really careful move indeed. What was impressive was that Nepomniachtchi was playing incredibly quickly, fluently. Actually, it was Carlsen who was running a little short of time. But okay, it's nothing to do with time, this position. Basically, white is lost. So the game finished like this. And now that's a very careful move indeed. Okay, so we're forcing the bishop away from this diagonal. If bishop back, then king g4 picks up the pawn, and well, let's say bishop f8. You can just take this pawn. So a fantastic win from Nepomniachtchi. Really beautiful strategy.